Hey folks, guess what? It's new video time! Now some of you might remember, I tested this lens a while back on the Sony A7 Mark III, but my first copy was kind of a diva, messed up XF data, and it refused to shoot at f3.5 at the wide end. Not cool. So I hunted down another 135-135mm AFD. This one works perfectly. No drama. I paired it with the original Canon EF to RF adapter that has the drop-in filter slot. If you know me, you know I love that feature. Before we dive in, a quick reminder. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that bell so you never miss an upload. Smash that like button to help the channel grow. Alright, let's get into the specs of the 135mm and see what this lens can really do. The Canon EF 35-135mm f3.5-4.5 AFD hit the market in June 1988 with an original price of 71,200 yen. Inside, you've got 12 groups and 16 elements, with a 6-blade diaphragm. The aperture closes down to f29, and the closest focusing distance is 0.95 meters, giving you a maximum magnification of 0.18. It takes 58mm filters, measures 73.4 across, and is 94.5 millimeters long, and weighs 475 grams. The Canon lens hood for this model is called the EW68B, and back in the day you had to buy it separately when you purchased the lens. It simply clicks into place on the front of the lens. I'm a big fan of the older EF series up until about 1990. At least when it comes to the more affordable, consumer-oriented lenses, I find them more appealing and in many cases more solidly built than the newer series made after 1990. This doesn't apply to the L series lenses, of course. Those have always been and still are state-of-the-art. The AFD motor in this lens is definitely audible when it's working, so it's not the best choice for videographers who rely on autofocus. As a push-pull zoom, it doesn't offer many controls, just a switch to toggle between autofocus and manual focus. With AFD motors, there's no full-time manual override of the AF system. Manual focusing isn't exactly buttery smooth like on true manual lenses, and it makes a faint grinding noise, which is totally normal for this type. That said, precise focusing is still totally doable with this lens. Let's see how this late 80s zoom holds up on a modern mirrorless body. First, I took a look at the autofocus performance. As you can see here, the AF speed can't really compare to modern lenses that use more advanced focusing motors. That said, it seems a modern camera can still squeeze quite a bit out of these older motors, so I'm actually pretty happy with the speed. Focusing accuracy was also very good. Only on a few occasions did the autofocus need to make a slight correction. For everyday shooting with a standard zoom, the speed is more than good enough for me. But I'll let you decide for yourself. To evaluate the optical performance, I'll start, just like always, by showing you some unedited RAW files. These give you a detailed look at how the lens performs under real-world conditions. At the end of the video, you'll see the same and even more shots after I've processed them in Lightroom. It's worth noting that there's no correction profile available for this lens to fix optical flaws. It's true that this kind of backlighting is pretty unusual and probably won't come up often in everyday photography. Still, it's a great example of why it's so important to pay attention to how direct sunlight can affect your shot. Things like loss of contrast, for example. In general, I recommend getting a proper lens hood and using it all the time. It won't really help when you're shooting directly into the sun, but in the much more common situations with side lighting, it can definitely make a difference. For the brick wall shot, I used a 35mm focal length at an aperture of f5. The barrel distortion is clearly visible. In the center, the lens delivers very good sharpness, but it noticeably drops off toward the edges. Even at f5, which is one full stop down, you can still see a strong amount of vignetting. This aperture isn't really suitable if you want decent sharpness from one corner of the frame to the other. For this focal length range, I'd recommend shooting at f8, ideally even f11. Going any smaller than that, however, actually reduces overall sharpness because diffraction starts to get in the way. Here you can see the effect of diffraction. At least on my computer screen, it's pretty noticeable. Shooting at f22 or even f29 makes the sharpness drop off even more. At a 50mm focal length, you're already getting very good sharpness in the center at f5.6, but stopping down to f8 is still worth it, even for the center. In a moment, I'll also show you the comparison between f8 and f11 at 50mm. Going to f11, however, doesn't offer any visible improvement. In my opinion, this lens delivers its best image quality in the 50-70mm range at f11. You really can't do better than that. Of course, the question is, how often you actually need consistently high sharpness across the entire frame. For portraits, that's usually not necessary, and the same goes for close-ups and detail shots. This lens is a compromise when it comes to aperture, size, weight, focal range, and of course, price. It offers a very practical zoom range, and thanks to the EF mount, it works with all EF cameras. Plus, with an adapter, like the one I'm using here, it can also be used on Canon's mirrorless R series bodies. Now, let's take a quick look at the 100 and a 135mm focal lengths. The image quality at longer focal lengths, like 100 and 135mm, is satisfactory at f8, but not outstanding. It's important to keep in mind that what you're seeing here are unedited 45-megapixel RAW files at 100 to 200% zoom, shot with a lens that was designed and optically calculated for film photography back in 1988. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that there isn't a proper lens profile to correct the existing optical flaws. After a bit of experimenting in Lightroom, I found a solution that provides a solid foundation for improving image quality, and in many cases, it might be good enough. A while back, I tested the Canon EF 28-135mm f3.5-5.6 USM-IS, which does have a lens profile. I used that profile in the following examples to correct some of the optical flaws of the 35-135mm lens I'm testing here. In my opinion, the results are pretty good. What do you think? Feel free to let me know in the comments. With this profile, you can effectively control the vignetting on the 35-135mm. In most cases, it also does a good job correcting distortion. Only in particularly challenging shooting situations, like in this example, did I make some additional manual adjustments. Of course, I can't skip showing you an example of using the profile at 135mm. The vignetting is noticeably reduced. On closer inspection, you can spot an onion ring pattern in the rendered aperture shapes. The so-called onion ring pattern you're seeing in the bokeh comes from the way a spherical lens elements are manufactured. Tiny concentric grooves left over from the grinding or molding process can show up in out-of-focus highlights, especially with point light sources. And while it's not a defect, it's simply a side effect of how these elements are made. Here's another nice example, shot at 135mm and f8. For this kind of image, the lens delivers more than enough quality, really very good results. As we wrap up the video, I'd like to show you the edited shots I promised, processed in Lightroom and saved as JPEGs. They give you a good sense of the lens's optical performance. Thanks again for your time and your interest, and I'll see you in the next video.